Welcome to Midnight Horrors. Dive into chilling tales and dark mysteries. Subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. Story 1: The Haunting of Small Fry Lake. It was the summer of 1987, and my father, then 18 years old, decided to go on a camping trip with his friends at Small Fry Lake, just outside Portland, Oregon. What was meant to be a weekend of fun and relaxation turned into a night of terror, one that he would never forget. This is his story. The plan was simple: drive out to Small Fry Lake, set up camp, and enjoy a few days of swimming, hiking, and late-night beers by the campfire. My father and his 3 friends were excited to escape the city and spend some time in the wilderness. They packed lightly, bringing only a few blankets, some snacks, and a case of beer. The drive was uneventful, but as they neared the lake, the atmosphere began to change. The air grew colder, and an unsettling silence fell over the group. They dismissed it as nerves and continued on, eager to reach their campsite. When they arrived, they found a cleared-out area where they could park their car and set up their tents. It was perfect, secluded, quiet, and surrounded by dense forest. As the night fell, the group made a small fire and cracked open their beers. They laughed and joked, the flickering flames casting eerie shadows on the trees around them. After a few drinks, someone suggested they go for a midnight swim. The lake was only a short walk away, and the idea of cooling off in the dark water was too tempting to resist. They didn't have a trail to follow, but they knew the general direction of the lake. With a couple of flashlights in hand, they set off into the forest. The deeper they went, the more uneasy my father felt. The temperature seemed to drop with every step, and the once familiar sounds of the forest were replaced by an oppressive silence. Still, they pressed on, determined to find the lake. About 15 minutes into the walk, the air grew even colder. My father felt the hairs on his arms and neck stand up, and a deep sense of dread washed over him. He wasn't the only one. Without a word, the group stopped in their tracks, all of them suddenly aware that something was terribly wrong. My father described it as a presence of dark, malevolent force that was watching them, waiting for them to make a move. Panic set in, and without a word, they turned and ran back to the campsite as fast as they could. My father remembers the feeling of something chasing them, though he never saw anything. It was as if the forest itself had come alive, the shadows twisting and stretching toward them, trying to pull them back. They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of their car. When they finally made it back to the campsite, they quickly doused the fire, jumped into the car, and sped off into the night. No one said a word on the drive home, the fear still fresh in their minds. They left everything behind: blankets, clothes, even the case of beer they had barely touched. They just wanted to get as far away from that place as possible. A few weeks later, my father learned that he wasn't the only one to have a terrifying experience at Small Fry Lake. During a family camping trip, he overheard another camper talking about a strange, eerie feeling they had while hiking near the lake. They described the same cold chill, the same sense of being watched, and the same uncontrollable urge to flee. My father never returned to Small Fry Lake, and to this date, he refuses to talk about what happened that night. Whatever it was that they encountered in the forest, it was enough to leave a lasting mark on him. He believes that something evil lurks in the woods around Small Fry Lake, and he warns anyone who will listen to stay away. Story 2. The Shadow in the Barn. In the fall of 1995, my Uncle Joe, a farmer in rural Indiana, had an encounter that shook him to his core. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy, someone who didn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural. But after what he experienced in the old barn on his property, he was never the same. It was late September, and the days were getting shorter. Uncle Joe was working late one evening, finishing up chores around the farm. The old barn at the edge of the property had been abandoned for years, left to rot after the roof caved in during a storm. Uncle Joe had no reason to go near it until that evening, and he noticed something strange. As he walked by the barn, he saw a faint light flickering inside. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light, but as he got closer, he realized the light was real. It was coming from deep within the barn, where no light should have been. Curious and a little unnerved, Uncle Joe decided to investigate. As Uncle Joe stepped into the barn, the air grew cold and a sense of unease washed over him. The barn was dark, filled with shadows that seemed to move on their own. The light he had seen from outside was gone, replaced by an oppressive darkness. Uncle Joe's instincts told him to leave, but his curiosity got the better of him. He moved deeper into the barn, his footsteps echoing on the creaky wooden floor. That's when he saw a dark figure standing in the corner of the barn, its form barely visible in the shadows. The figure was tall and thin, with long, bony fingers that seemed to reach out toward him. Uncle Joe froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure didn't move, but he could feel its eyes on him, watching, waiting. Terrified, Uncle Joe backed away, but the figure didn't follow. It remained in the corner, its presence looming over him like a dark cloud. He turned and ran, not stopping until he was back in his house, the door locked tight behind him. That night, Uncle Joe couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the figure standing in the barn, its cold gaze piercing through the darkness. Over the next few days, strange things started happening around the farm. Tools went missing, animals acted skittish, and every night, Uncle Joe would wake up at the same time, 3:33 a.m., feeling as if someone was watching him. He tried to brush it off, but the feeling of dread only grew stronger. A week after the encounter, Uncle Joe couldn't take it anymore. He decided to confront whatever was haunting him. Armed with nothing but a flashlight, he made his way back to the barn. The moment he stepped inside, the temperature dropped, and the shadows seemed to close in around him. There it was, the figure, standing in the same corner, its bony fingers outstretched. But this time, it moved slowly, deliberately. It stepped toward Uncle Joe, its presence suffocating. Uncle Joe stumbled back, his flashlight flickering, but he held his ground. "What do you want?" he shouted, his voice trembling. The figure stopped, and for a moment, the barn was silent. Then, in a voice that sounded like the wind through the trees, it spoke. "Leave this place. Leave and never return." With that, the figure vanished, and the barn was plunged into darkness. Uncle Joe didn't need to be told twice. The next day, he packed up and moved to a new farm miles away. He never spoke about what happened in the barn again, but he left the old property to rot, a dark secret hidden away in the woods. Whatever it was that haunted the barn, it was clear it didn't want to be disturbed. Thank you for watching our video. We hope these stories sent chills down your spine. If you enjoyed this content, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more terrifying tales. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Part 2 of our True Scary Story series is coming soon, filled with even more bone-chilling encounters. Stay tuned. Your support means everything to us, and we can't wait to share more with you.